This was July 17th, 2008. I went to the Thursday night special 8 o'clock premiere showing of The Dark Knight at my local theater. And when I got home, I wrote a quick note of my thoughts on a little refrigerator magnet marker board. And this is what I wrote. I wrote Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Best Cinematography, Best Adapted Screenplay, and I think one or two other Oscar categories I thought it should be nominated for and win. And at the very bottom, I wrote Best Comic Book Superhero Movie of All Time. Now, obviously, it was never going to be nominated for any of that except maybe the supporting actor category for Heath Ledger, but I'm not even sure if it would have got that nomination had it not been for Heath tragically passing. It should have, but I'm not sure if it would have had not been for that element. But I rewatched The Dark Knight for its 15th anniversary, and I stand by my initial assessment that I wrote at the bottom of that marker board 15 years ago. It is the GOAT. At the time I wrote that, though, I expected the genre was going to get better from there. But 15 years later, even after we've had dozens of Marvel Universe offerings, and don't get me wrong, I love a lot of those movies. We've had a few great Fox X-Men flicks, an entire shared DC universe. Even after all that, The Dark Knight is still the best. And we can get into all the individual components, the acting, directing, writing, but all the really good superhero movies have those elements to them, have really good acting and writing and directing. So what sets The Dark Knight apart from all the rest of these movies? What makes it the greatest? First, it takes itself seriously. It asks the question, if Batman existed in the real world, why would he exist? Okay, so that's number one. How would he act? And how would the world react? How would his world react to him? These are the same questions that Nolan asked in Batman Begins. He just expanded on them in this movie. And with that expansion, we got deeper questions of justice and vigilantism. We got the question of, when the legal authority fails to uphold justice, is it right for a citizen to mete out that justice on his own? We get into systemic institutional corruption. How far can a person morally go to fight the corruption before becoming a villain? We've got the classic good versus evil theme, but instead of some sneering, mustache-twirling villain or some unrelatable cosmic or global threat, we have a realistic embodiment of that evil in this genius, sociopathic, anarchic terrorist played to absolute perfection by Heath Ledger. You could see this Joker in real life. You could see somebody that crazy, that depraved in real life doing stuff like this. So maybe it's the best superhero movie because, in a way, it's not really a superhero movie at all. It's a thought-provoking crime drama that just so happens to feature a character wearing a cape and beating up the bad guys. Unfortunately, the comic book movie machines that developed in the post-Dark Knight landscape learned all the wrong lessons from the movie. You got Marvel, and again, I've loved most of their films, but Marvel set out to differentiate itself with bright colors and copious one-liners and impossible plot devices and this bombast and all this flash. And there's room for that, and it worked a lot. But it was a reaction to The Dark Knight. Yet, arguably, their best movie, The Winter Soldier, is more grounded and topical and is their most Dark Knight-esque picture, and that's one of the reasons why it's their best, possibly their absolute best. And then you got DC, on the other hand, which Batman is a DC property, double down on the grit and philosophy, which worked great in The Dark Knight, to the point of producing these dull, brooding, pretentious pseudo-epics. And The Dark Knight, it avoids the flash and the bombast and the spectacle for grounded, gritty realism and larger philosophical themes, but without ever becoming grim or humorless and never failing to entertain. No other comic book movie film before had quite brought all those ingredients together with that level of masterful execution, and none have since. And I'm not sure one ever will. You look at all the genres, a genre has to peak at some time. And you look at the genres that have gone before, the comic book superhero movies. Has there been a better Western made since The Searchers? Maybe you could argue for some, but definitely not in the last 30 years. You look at gangster pictures. Has a better gangster picture been made than The Godfather? Maybe The Godfather Part 2. What other film are you going to argue there? Maybe Goodfellas. Even so, you're back to that 30 plus years again. I feel like those genres peaked. So will a new superhero comic book movie ever top The Dark Knight? Maybe. I don't know. But unless until that day comes, for what it's worth, The Dark Knight remains the greatest comic book superhero film of all time. If you enjoyed that clip, be sure to check out the full episode on the Words Like That YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts.
Can't have no words like that. Well,